Columbus, welcoming you to another session of Coach Gurbani. Um, and I know that we have people here who haven't appeared here for some time. Welcome. Today we are going to take a somewhat different tack in that we are going to be talking about the Vaisakhi of 1699, and the trigger for that was actually the fact that we celebrated Vaisakhi not long ago, and we thought it might be a good idea to take a bit of a breather from Bhavanakri, with which we have been engaged for quite some time. And so with that in mind, we are actually going to broach on a subject that is how do I put it? It's a seminal event in our history. It is certainly shaped our collective consciousness, and I think it pretty much determines how we as a corporate body view ourselves today. And all of this can be traced back to the Vaisakhi of 1699. So while we may not be able to finish our discussion today, we certainly are going to give it a shot and see if we can at least have a dialogue around some of the questions that I think a lot of people have, questions that we encounter in conversation. So we felt at Coach Gurbani that it might be worthwhile to at least spend a little bit of time trying to understand what the antecedents are of this very sort of pivotal event in our history. What are the implications, or what were the implications then, and what are the implications for us today, hundreds of years removed from the event? Also want to talk a little bit about if there was any, whether Guru Gobind Singh established the order of the Khalsa as a political or military necessity, or was he simply building on the foundation that Guru Nanak had established? So, without much ado, I am going to put out some specific questions so that it gives each one of you an opportunity to answer those in as specific a way as you can. Since this is not philosophy, we're talking about a historical event that has implications for us. So my first question to all of you is going to be, what in your view transpired in 1699? Do you view the event as a continuum of the message that Guru Nanak had basically already established? Or do you see this as some sort of a necessity dictated by time? Or is the truth somewhere in between? I mean, the evolution of our community. And if you do see a continuity, and if you do see this as building on Guru Nanak, please help us understand what are some of the ideas that you see reflected in what Guru Gobind Singh did. In other words, if I were to talk about, what are some of the things that he tried to do, and how can we trace them back to Guru Nanak, if at all? So that's my first question to each one of you. Please try and be as specific and to the point as possible, because we have quite a few people, a lot to talk about, and just being respectful of each other's time. So with that, I am going to reach out to somebody I haven't spoken to in a long time, Sardar Harpreet Singh, who has graced the occasion today. Harpreet Singh, do you want to set the tone?
Virjit, is a very interesting topic. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me. So, I think the question is something that you don't see as much in the community, because for the community is largely a continuum, and there is a great deal of continuity. but the scholars like to, in academia, try to look at these questions in various ways. And the scholar for scholarship, Guru Nanak was a quote unquote pacifist, and Guru Gobind Singh was a quote unquote a militant, which I think is a misplaced uh, understanding of the Sikh tradition. Our so when we look at Guru Nanak's Bani, Guru Nanak is the one who's talking about chopping of heads. Joto prem khilan ka chao, sir tar tali guli mariao. Guru Nanak is the one who's talking about, that death is preferred than dishonorable living. So I think the Guru Nanak sets the tone very early on, and then Guru Nanak is someone who is actually speaking out against Babur in the famous Babur Bani. He's the one who's being imprisoned, uh, and this is largely because Sikhi is beginning at that moment. The Sikh community is in its infancy, and we don't have an army. We don't have people that are ready for what Guru Hargobind was able to do and Guru Gobind Singh was able to do. And incidentally, the Khalsa is the name given by Guru Hargobind to his army, and fighting when he's fighting Shah Jahan. So, not to take too much time from others, I would say that I see this as certainly a continuity, not a discontinuity.
Thank you very much, Harpreet. You raised some very interesting points. And before I move on to the next person, I think what Harpreet is suggesting, or at least what I'm picking up, is that perhaps Guru Nanak, that Sikhi was perhaps without any doubt being established as a political movement as well. It was not simply a movement in the sense of Nanak being a pacifist. And so I think when I reach out to the others, would you please bear that in mind and help us understand how was it actually a political movement, if you think it was as well. So let me reach out to Uncle Ranbir Singh, who I also know has joined us today. Uncle Ji.
My own view is that this was a continuation, and the impression that Guru Sahib wanted to militarize us simply because he was making a political party, I think is not correct. Guru Sahib was more concerned with our fighting Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Ahankar, and being as a guru and following in the spirit of all his 9 predecessors. He became a soldier of necessity because the Sikhs were so persecuted by the hill Rajas that he, in fact, history tells us that on 3 occasions he left Anandpur Sahib just to pacify the Rajas. But then wherever he went, they sort of again ganged up against him and tried to eliminate him or destroy his mission. So finally, he decided that we got to fight back. And in this context, I think we refer to Guru Granth Sahib. Guru Nanak Sahib mentions, when Babur came, he mentions that India was treated like that because they were not prepared. And I think that's a very telling comment by Guru Nanak Sahib, that we have to be prepared to meet the invaders and the tormentors. Khalsa was created primarily for that purpose. We are sort of human rights warriors then and now and forever. That's the way I look at it.
Hanji, thank you, Ji. Thank you very much. I think so far I'm hearing the view that this is obviously a continuation of the message of Guru Nanak, and that the formation of the order of the Khalsa was perhaps also dictated somewhat by necessity, if I'm not mistaken. Although it does not in any way violate the principles that Guru Nanak set forth. Hanji, Dr. Ajit Singh is on as well. Would you want to elaborate a little bit on this?
I would love to elaborate, but it might be more than a little bit. So I'll keep it to a little bit.
That would be
I,
nice.
I look at Guru Nanak's, the continuum, shall we say, from Guru Nanak to Guru Gobind Singh, as an experiment in nation building, which obviously has political overtones to it. And what do, well, Dr. Sandhu just talked about the way things were in India at the time, and we know that well. The early invasions and so on, right through the Khyber Pass into Punjab. Now, if you need to create a nation which can stand on its own, has the economic wherewithal in the future, and some modicum of self-governance, community building, then you need a different model. You need a paradigm shift. And that's not done in a day or a year, for that matter. So the gestation of the Khalsa, I would say, took from Guru Nanak to Guru Gobind Singh. That's the gestational period. Now, what do a people need? Is some freedom of expression, a freedom to be what they are, religious freedom, a way to live by things, economic hope, and that was the idea. That is why Guru Nanak founded Kartarpur, and Guru Angad founded Khadur Sahib, and Guru Amar Das, going on down the list. By the time you get to Guru Gobind Singh, you have developed the infrastructure of the Punjab, of northern India, northwestern India. Economically, you have developed it. And that's exactly what was done. Now, the Guru Granth provides you the philosophic basis for this new nation, if you wish. And we look at sometimes the Khalsa as a necessity to fight, and I don't think that's really quite right. Because Guru Hargobind had fought battles without the Khalsa, without the long-haired Khalsa. So had Guru Gobind Singh. Most of the battles he had fought. After 1699, I think he fought only 4 battles, perhaps. Perhaps Harpreet can correct me. The number may be right or wrong, but it's still considerably less than what he had already done. So it was not to create a special fighting force, but it was to give people a certain sense of self-sufficiency, and if need be, to be able to take up arms. So it is that kind of a continuum that I'm looking at. If you look at Sarbat Khalsa, for example, its roots, which is a political institution, its roots lie in the collectives of the Sikhs that used to come to see Guru Amar Das twice a year, at Vaisakhi and Diwali, I guess, something like that. So that evolved into the Sarbat Khalsa.
Hanji.
Pardon?
No, I'm just acknowledging what you're saying.
Hosan asked that too. But where was I there? Yeah.
You were talking about the Sarbat Khalsa as an
So
institution
the
that
roots of
evolved.
that are, I would say, in that evolved. So if you look at it, there are many institutions that evolved. When Guru Gobind Singh asked the 5 to initiate him in turn, it was also a management model, transfer of sharing of power.
So I'm going to hold you there. I'm going to stop you there. We're going to come back to this model a little later. But I think you made the point.
Somewhere give you a to be an art of nation building that's being practiced.
Yes.
The nation has spiritual foundation. It also has political models
overtones. Yes.
to make it function.
Yes, thank you. I will come back to some of this. I think Dr. Ajit Singh is basically, if I can capture what he's saying, is that the Guru Granth provides us with the philosophic kernel, and the institutions that were built over a period of incubation that lasted 250 years found some sort of culmination in what Guru Gobind Singh established in 1699. And while I was listening to Harpreet and Uncle Ranbir Singh and also Dr. Ajit Singh, it occurred to me that, we've all talked about possible political overtones, which I think some of us who are politically correct try to avoid. But it occurred to me, that there is in the Savaiyas of the Bhatts, there is this a couple of lines that talk about Nanak Raj Chalaya Kort Satani Neev De. I think that is as clear a statement as you can find that Guru Nanak was, in fact, laying the foundations of a new form, a new system. And that also includes a political system. So I just wanted to make that point out there. So let me now move on and give others a chance to elaborate a little bit more or agree or disagree. Ranavirji, I know you're there. Would you like to be the next one up?
Hear me?
Hanji, we can hear you.
Okay, well, the first Guru Father to everybody because I have been away for about 4 or 5 months. Missed you guys. Anyways, coming back to I heard everything. My take is that I don't think any of our gurus started with the idea of creating a new nation. I don't believe that. Then I'm not very well informed either. And I thought Guru Sahib just wanted to create and alert people whatever was going on at that time, the ritualistic practices, inequality, treatment of women and other things. He was challenging the existing practices. He didn't set out to create anything new. But the circumstances over 250 years led us to create the 10th Guru, an army to protect the belief, a system belief, which was propagated over the previous 250 years. And other thing which is unsettling to me when we talk about Guru Nanak's teaching, that Guru Nanak put a seed, and then we talk about Guru Gobind Singh Sahib. My feeling of why I say that it's unsettling to me, because Guru Nanak message and message of other gurus is integrated message. It's not that Guru Nanak message is one and Guru Gobind Singh's message is another. This is a continuum. Yes, the word continuum is out there, but the message is integrated. Otherwise, Guru Nanak would not have said what Guru Gobind Singh said in the end, that there's not going to be any Guru after that, everything is finished. Guru Nanak Sahib very clearly said who is going to be the next Guru. The reason he said because his message was not complete, it was supposed to continue. So when we say the Guru Nanak message was only between the years of say 1469 and 1539 when he was alive, no, I don't believe that. I think the message, what he put a seed there, the other gurus were cultivating that seed, and there came a need to protect that plant which was growing up. And other thing
Haji,
would,
Haji.
yes, okay, I will pause here. Okay, then.
Haji, no, thank you. I get your point. I think what you have said is that Guru Nanak, intended to actually build a nation. And I'm going to throw the thought out to the rest of the forum. How does also, and Guruji himself is very clear about his mission. How Muraka Kare Laya, I think that is a very clear indication, and there are other indications there that he certainly had a sense of what he was doing. But your point that this is a continuum, I think, is what everyone else is saying here. So let me just continue along these lines and reach out to Preet Singh in Delhi. You have a minute or two to either agree with what is being said, and if you disagree, please come right to the point.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. Uh, this is a very vast topic, and I have a lot of, so to say, confusions on this topic. Uh, I would just raise a few points. First of all, when we talk about a system or an institution, and we refer to our 10 Padshahis as gurus, the first thing which I would like to raise is I'm not sure whether at the time of the Padshahis they called themselves gurus. Because the concept of guru again is akin to attaching to the physical being. And so when we say guru and when we say institution, why I would like to raise this point is because everybody discussed how whether or not Guru Nanak formed a new Raj or embarked upon the process of nation building, because these concepts, it's a very fine line. But when we say institutionalized, this also creates a kind of an opportunity for a confusion. Maybe I don't have the right words right now, wherein you make it into a cult, and that is what becomes a problem rather than a solution. So I want everybody to delve into it, whether it was the guru who started it or whether it was an institution. But coming very quickly to uh, touch upon some of the points, I think Nanak himself started the the philosophy which was continued by all the Padshahis. There was no difference on that. He challenged the then established rule by directly challenging Babur and the Hindu priests and the Muslim priests, which I think was throwing the challenge directly to the established authority, which was not soft in any manner. And this was continued by Ramdas Pacha, who set up political institutions. He set up Ramdaspur, which was a lot of work at a political level. Hargobind Pacha took up Miri and Piri. We can even read history where there are references that Angad Pacha had, akhadas where physical training used to happen and breeding of horses used to happen. So the militant part also had started. I think it was the culmination point was Arjun, when Arjun declared the word of truth in the form of Adi Granth, when all the established power immediately took note of this announcement of truth, that this is something which could shake the foundations of the established rule. When adversarial attitude from the established power started, and which is when gradually from Hargobind Pacha, all the Pachais had to, in a certain manner, take up to arms. So there is a continuum there, and that is how I would like to answer the question.
Thank you, Ji. I think Ravinder Virji got disconnected. So I think I will go to Gurdeep Virji, Montreal.
सत श्री अकाल जी सर
हाँ जी भाई खालसा फतेह हाँ जी
listening me my voice is clear
हाँ जी
I figure out that the seed was sowed by Guru Nanak, like the foundation stone was laid by Guru Nanak, and the parapet, which we call Banera in Punjabi, was finished by Guru Gobind Singh. I see nothing wrong neither in Guru Granth Sahib, neither what Guru Gobind Singh did was not contradiction to anybody. It was rather a reform which was existing, which was needed actually 1,000 years before. So they brought it to enlighten everybody. Guru Nanak Dev Ji mentioned in Pehli Pashahi, "Jaan tud bhave, teg bagawe, sir mundi kat jaye." Guru Nanak decided when Babur hamla kita, everybody knows Khurasan ke samana kiya, Hindustan daraya, iti maar pe kar lane tan ki izzat na aaya. It shows clear evidence that Guru Nanak decided to come up to a final form which will take 2.5 years. It took 2.5 centuries, and Guru Gobind Singh did the final completion of this project, which was in thought of Guru Nanak. And Guru Nanak also mentioned when Guru Arjan Dev Ji had an attack, there was no defense. But Sikh militant, it's not militant, I don't think so. They have created Bhakti and Shakti, the smell of Bhakti and Shakti, because in the previous thousands of years back in Indian history, you see alone Bhakti never worked. when the Buddhist monk, they were probably close to 1,017,000 Abdali, Ambush Abdali came with 70,000 soldiers and they all ran away. So something was missing. So Gurus added Bhakti and Shakti together, which were proved during the Sixth battle. And with the tyranny only, it's for the defense only. And I see everything, the format was created by Guru Nanak and the completion form was given by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Ji. Gurjeet Veer Ji. ਗੁਰਜੀਤ ਵੀਰ ਜੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਭਾਈ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਫਤਿਹ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜੀ ਅੱਛਾ ਜੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਲਈਏ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
The word Vaheguru comes from the composition which is written by Pats. Only one Pat has used this word. Khalsa Shabd has been used by Kabir in the whole Gurbani. So when word in Kabir, the first Bhagat, then lineage of 35. First one is the Fateh itself. Fateh is Fateh Bhai Manjeet. Is nothing that we are going to slaughter someone. We have to win over our mind. This is very clearly explained in Gurbani. Let's ask the 10th Guru himself. I won't say Guru. Let's ask the 10th Guru himself. What he has written. Shri Nanak Angad Karmana. This is what 10th Pasha says. I am accepting. He doesn't write Guru or anything else there. He says Shri Nanak Angad Karmana. I am accepting Nanak and Angad same. Amardas Angad Pehchana. Then the Amardas found ultimately Angad, and then this continued. Amardas Ramdas Kahayo. Amardas, so next lineage is Ramdas. Pin Pin Sab. And this Pin Kar Jana started from Shri Chand. He never accepted Angad as Nanak. And it continued up to 4 bodies. Then Datu Dasu, Tir Maliye, all this gang, which is ultimately their own blood, but was against Gurmat. That's why I think he has to write it. Ek Roop Kinhu Pehchana. Rarely people accepted that they are all one. Very rare people. Jin Jana Tin Hi Sid Pai. The one who accepted them as one source, because the Gurbani comes from Parmeshwar, not from Nanak or Gobind. The ultimate source is Mahapurukh. So then he further says, Ramdas Harsho Mil Gaye. So he clarifies that Ramdas is Purna Brahm. Gurta Det Arjune Pai. Now he has used the word Gurta. He hasn't used the word Gurta Gaddi or something, which is our own addition. The word is Gurta, and ultimately the Gurta was given to Panj Pyare after this. Gurta Det Arjune Pai, Jab Arjun Prabh Lok Siddhai. Look at these words. We never use these words in our talking. We say, oh, Swargavasi ho gayi. But here, Dasam Pasha says, Jab Arjun Prabh Lok Siddhai. That's the right word which Sikhs should use. Prabh Lok Siddhai. Yeah, he says to 9th Pasha, Prabhpur Kiya Pyan, which is same words. Har Gobind Prabh Lok Siddhare. Then after that, Har Gobind also left the world. Har Rai Te Tha Bethare. Then Har Rai Ji came. Hari Krishna Tin Ke Sutavai. And he has even told that Hari Krishna Ji was the son of Hari Rai Ji. So, complete lineage coming there. And then Ramdas Harsho Mil Gaye, Gurta Det Arjun Pai, Jab Arjun Prabh Lok Siddhaaye, Har Gobind Prabh Lok Siddhaaye, Hari Rai Te Jaan Bethare, Hari Krishna Tin Ke Sutavai. So, this is the lineage he's trying to tell. It's no one else. The next one was the 9th Pasha himself, which is Guru Tegh Bahadur. So there is no difference. It's all the same lineage. And who he himself says, if someone doesn't recognize them, then it is their problem. It's not the problem of Gurmat. It's a lack of our understanding. So I'll finish it there. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji.
I wanted to just make a quick point. I think Prabpreet raised a very, very interesting point that we are looking at things with the benefit of hindsight. And this is something that we must all bear in mind. I mean, we are hundreds of years removed from these events, and a when the present looks at the past, we have the advantage of certain categories that were obviously not applicable then, or at least didn't exist then. Things like nation building and institutionalizing. I mean, all of these are categories that are accessible to us today, and that is how we are looking at our past. So I would say that we are looking at it through some lens, through some framework. So yes, but we're not trying to second guess the gurus here. Meenaji, I know you're the last person here for the first question. We have tons of questions, so I want to move on. If you feel that you are in general agreement with what has been said so far, please say so. If not, let us know what you think.
Hanji, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Fateh. Well, I agree with the continuation part, that the Jot from Guru Nanak Ji until Guru Gobind Singh Ji was a continuation. There is no doubt about it at all. But the political overtones is bothersome to me. I don't know in what way you are discussing here, but politically, I think it was never the movement was not started for that reason. The Khalsa was created to stand different, to stand up by his conduct and his looks, but not to have a different nation or have any kind of political movement or overtones to say. So it should not be taken in that context. That would be my...
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to dwell, at least not today, on whether or not there were political overtones. I think most of the participants seem to think that there were definite political overtones and are, which explains the state of our relationship with the Indian state, for that matter. But I don't want to go there today. I want to actually take another turn and start with Harpreet Singh again, round 2. So Harpreet, the order of the Khalsa has certain requirements, right? It has requirements of external insignias. It has requirements of a discipline. You're expected to sort of live a certain discipline, and wear a certain uniform. Now, as you probably know just as well as I do, that is one of the questions that keeps popping up these days. What is the place of wearing such an external insignia today, in today's world? So how would you address that?
So just so I'm understanding your question, that are we talking about relevance here?
Yes, I mean, my point is that, one encounters this quite a bit, where people are questioning the relevance or even the necessity of having to wear the 5 kakars, of sort of subjecting oneself to the discipline.
So yeah, so
yes, particularly the external insignia.
So there are a number of ways of looking at this question, and I want to quote Sardar Kapoor Singh, who says that the kakars are not the essence of Sikhi, but rather they are the fence that has enabled Sikhi to survive over the centuries. And so the idea here is that the moment someone loses his or her identity, which is largely made up of the kakars, then there is a dilution of other things that accompany this loss. So and Kapoor Singh in this article does a sociological analysis of people who moved to Africa, people who moved to Malaysia, people who moved to England, and people in the U.S., like the folks who ended up shedding their identity, marrying Mexicans. Nothing wrong with marrying Mexicans, but the idea of shedding an identity that they basically after that became indistinguishable from the mainstream, and lost their not only the Sikh identity but also their connection to Sikhi. So it's an interesting question, and so I mean that's a more of a sociological answer that Kapoor Singh is giving. But at the same time, I think when Guru Gobind Singh is giving us this identity, he's not saying that this has some kind of a sacral value. It's largely an identity that distinguishes us from others. And when you look at the rehat, the prescriptive and the proscriptive elements of the rehat. So if you look at the proscriptive ones, like you're not going to eat halal, for example. And the Rehatnamas, if you go back to the Param Marg Granth, which is also called the Prem Samarg, it talks about if you're going to have a Muslim convert to Sikhi, you have to feed them pork soup to ensure that they have abdicated their original faith. So clearly, there is something very important about the sense of identity, the sense of solidarity that these kakars give us. They give us cohesion. And I want to go back to this idea of nation that people have been discussing, that we are not a nation. And the nation is defined in the academic literature as a group of people, a cohesive group of people that are challenging a state. So, and that's precisely what the Sikhs have done. That's why we are a nation. And that cohesion building comes from the identity. I think that's the starting point for that cohesion.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let me move on to Uncle Ranbir Singh Ji. Uncle Ji, I want you to just keep in mind what Harpreet is saying, that it is a means of cohesion, for a group, for a social group. But I also want to add another dimension in the question that I'm posing to you. Now, when Guru Gobind Singh, invited the Sikhs to Anandpur Sahib in 1699, and we know that roughly 80,000 people converged there, at least that's what I understand from what I've read, and that of the 80,000, 20,000 were initiated into the Khalsa, which leaves 60,000 out of it. So the question that I'm also asking along with this is, was it a prescription for every Sikh there to become a Khalsa, or was it a choice at the time?
I think that's a good question, and I entirely agree with what Dr. Harpreet Singh said, and I'll support that with a small, out of context quote from Guru Granth Sahib. Here is Kabir ji saying, "Dage hoye Puran mein juje, bin dage pag jai." This is where the identity question comes along. And we've known in history, whenever Sikhs were facing persecution, a lot of people did cut off their hair and try to merge with the crowd. In fact, when Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib was executed by the Mughals, a lot of Sikhs in Delhi, they refused to accept that they were Sikhs. And this is exactly what Kabirji says, "Bin dage pag jai." What gives Sikhs their martial history and their willingness to sacrifice all for the sake of the faith is this identity. And the question of whether all the Sikhs present in Guru Gobind Singh Sahib's Vaisakhi became his Sikhs or not, I think is an unnecessary question, because it's not necessary that the entire population of India were to become Sikh, for example, or the entire population of Punjab were to become Sikh. But those people who wanted to be saint soldiers and they met the challenge of the Guru and were willing to sacrifice their all for the Guru and for the right cause, they took Amrit and became Khalsa. Others did not. Now, there's nothing against those people, who do not join the Khalsa Panth or the nation of the Khalsa. We don't try to consider them as inferior, but they just didn't accept the Guru's discipline.
So can I just interrupt you? So do we still treat them as Sikhs, people who are not initiated into the Khalsa?
You see, the main point here is, and that has been discussed a lot recently, and in fact throughout our own history, people believe in the Sikh, but don't have the courage to become the Khalsa. And it's up to them. I cannot instill courage in them. It's by Guru's grace. And we always say, that coming to the Guru is by Guru's grace. We all the time pray, to God, saying, pray to the Guru, God, asking him to get us to meet the Guru. And then we pray to the Guru to get us to meet God. And it's a cyclic argument, but unless there is divine favor, a person will not become a Sikh. On the other hand, we have no way of enforcing. If some people love the Guru's teaching and they love to be around him, they're okay, they're welcome. But they should not call themselves members of the nation, the Khalsa nation that Guru Gobind Singh have created.
Hanji, thank you, Uncle Ji. Let me move on to Dr. Ajay Singh. So you heard what Dr. Ranbir Singh had to say, and I think he offered his view. My question remains unanswered. You and I have talked quite a bit about this, so I just want this to be known that we've discussed this back and forth. So, was it a prescriptive thing in 1699? If not, then would you consider somebody who's not a Khalsa a Sikh? And and then there's one more dimension to my question for you, and that is, is it still relevant today? I mean, or is it something that we just hold up as an aspiration?
Let me touch these things slightly.
Can you move a little towards the mouthpiece or wherever you are, because it's sounding as though you're in some deep cave.
Is that better now?
Yeah, it's better now.
All right. So there are a couple of things that have been said earlier, based on what I said earlier, and I need to touch them and I'll come to this as well.
Sure.
When I talk about the Sikhs, and I said an experiment in nation building. Now that nation, not every nation has boundaries in land. The Jews were a nation for 2,000 years, but they did not get a political boundaries in a land until very recently. So nation building is, and the term has been explained very well by Harpreet. I just want to make sure that you realize that I'm not talking of political boundaries in political countries, and that is not the issue here. But the people with a distinct identity, the Gurus created, and distinct identity, distinct way of life, and that makes a nation in my view. Now there are some things that have political dimensions to them, sometimes not. I'll take a simple example. If I were of a low caste Hindu, some rights I would not have. Now, are these human rights? Are these political matters? The solution may lie in a political entity, in a political struggle, or a political method, or a process. But to me, they are human rights. Gender issues are human rights, not necessarily political. institutionalized in the political domain. So sometimes these things are separate, but rather difficult to separate. Now, when at Vaisakhi 1699, we say that about 80,000 people attended, and about 20,000 people became Amritdhari in those days. Others may have done later, but that's not the issue. There is no evidence at all that Guru Gobind Singh said to the 60,000 who did not take Amrit at the time, that, hey, you're not my Sikhs, get out of my face. I don't need you here. He didn't say that. So there is always the core in a religious movement. There's a core at the center, the keeper of the traditions, and there's always the periphery, somewhat undecided, somewhat poorly connected, somewhat of double minds, and that's all right. And they all have a place. They all have a place. Now they're all Sikhs. In my view, anybody who calls himself a Sikh, therefore, labels himself a Sikh to the exclusion of anything else, is therefore a Sikh. Now, how good a Sikh he is depends upon our internal systems of checks and balances, identity, and those kind of things, which are at this time perhaps somewhat broken. How good a Sikh you accept him to be? Well, that depends on you. One, do you have the right to judge? Do you have the way to judge? Is there a system that exists to make a judgment? Is it necessary? And those are other things in that. And I think I touched on all the questions you raised, and I thank you.
What I was saying was that before I move on to Meena Penji, I want to go back to Harpreet Singh, just for some clarity. So Harpreet, you raised the idea of a nation as consisting of and Dr. Ajay Singh also touched on that, a common way of life, a common identity, and so on. So what is the distinction in today's day between a nation and a state? We use the term nation state. What is the distinction there?
So yeah, so a nation state is a fairly new construct. Did not exist until more recently, where you've got a nation that has a piece of land. So then that's called a nation state. But a nation by itself is, in scholarship, there are scholars like Benedict Anderson, who actually kind of did a lot of theoretical work on what a nation is, and then Anthony Marks is a more recent one, who was the political scientist out of Columbia and then became the president of another liberal arts college, a book called Faith in Nation, in which he's talking about how the idea of nation goes back to the European states that are monarchies, and you had these fights between Protestants and Catholics, and to build cohesion, the crown in France, for example, brought together the Catholics against the Protestants, the Huguenots specifically, and that cohesion created a French nation. Similarly, you had same sort of thing happening in Spain and in England. So theoretically, what they're saying is that anytime you have cohesion, and then that entity is fighting some kind of a political battle, and then it qualifies to be a nation. But if you had someone like, let's say a very cohesive group of people, but they don't have a political agenda, then you would not call it a nation. So that's what the consensus in scholarship is. But to go back to your more interesting question of was becoming a Khalsa mandatory? Now, is one thing to kind of speculate on this question. It's a very different thing to actually look at the texts written in that period. And I want to take your attention to Sri Guru Sobha, written in the court of Guru Gobind Singh, and according to Senapati, who's the author's testimony, Guru Gobind Singh himself edited the work at one point. And ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਸੁਧਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਲਿਖਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਸੁਧਾਰਦੇ ਸਨ. So in that work, Senapati is saying that unless you become a Khalsa, there is no salvation. and in his view, mukti, right? He used the word mukti, only happens if you become the Khalsa. So there is no doubt, according to that text, that this wasn't a voluntary order. It wasn't optional. It was something that everyone had to do. But does that mean that we discriminate against those who did not? It's not true. You had the Delhi Sangat, and he talks about this. It's very interesting historical evidence in this text. He says the Sangat of Delhi, when they heard that the Guru has ordained people to become the Khalsa, they said, we can't do that, and they refused to do it. And there was this dissension in the Sangat of Delhi, and over time they realized their mistake, quote unquote mistake, and then they all traveled to Nandpur to embrace Amrit, and they became Khalsa. So my point is that is one thing to kind of we shouldn't be speculating. We should be actually reading these texts that were written in that period, because we have such a rich history and it's all documented.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your.
May I add one comment to this?
Yes, go ahead. Quick one.
Well, you see, I've taught for 50 odd years, and near exam time, I've told students at times, unless you do what I tell you to do in class, in the laboratory, and otherwise, unless you follow these directions, you are in hell. You finished. Huh? But that doesn't mean that I'm going to flunk them. That doesn't mean I'm going to kill them, and that doesn't mean they necessarily flunk.
Yes.
So when the Guru says, unless you do this, you teri mukti koi nahi, it is like a something you might tell a student, keep your mind on the ball, keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't necessarily. We need to read the texts of the time, but not always literally. The text has to be interpreted in the culture and the context of time and place.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that comment on Harpreet's observations, and I sort of am inclined to agree with you. Just on a personal note here, I sort of would look at this question. I'm obviously in the business of raising questions here, but my own personal sort of way of looking at this would be that, look, if Guru Gobind Singh asked to become an Amritdhari and asked the Panj Pyara to baptize him, for me as a Sikh, that is cue enough, on what the path is. So, so that is cue enough. You don't need any.
1699 is good enough for us.
Yes, so to me, there's the cue. But yeah, thank you, Harpreet. I have some more questions, but in the interest of time, let me go to.
Just to respond just for a second to what IG Uncle just said, I agree with him that these are not to be taken literally, but my point is that there is emphasis, right? I mean, and Senapati is also not saying something literally in poetry. He's writing poetry, right? So the point is that if there is emphasis that this is really important, everyone should do it. So that message we can take, literally, that this is not optional. The Guru is expecting everyone to become the Khalsa.
Okay. So it's just a matter of time then for different people becoming Khalsa. Some will become sooner and some later. But with that, let me give Meena Panji a chance. There are others as well that I want to reach out to. Meenaji, do you have anything to add to what has been said so far?
Yeah, I want to bring the attention to the meaning of Khalsa. What do you mean by Khalsa? Literally, it means pure. A person is pure. Unless you become a Khalsa, you won't have mukti. So you have to, it's an internal thing. The Amrit is internal Amrit. Outside is Khande Bhatti Di Paul. Inside, it's the inside Amrit. So a person who is in alignment, what is in the heart, what's on the is the same thing in the words and same in action. Man, Bach, Karam. Alignment of all these three. A person who is at least trying to the best of their knowledge and abilities, I think that is a Khalsa, and that will attain salvation or mukti. And the outside is symbolic. and it is given to us. We don't take it. It is given to us. It's a दान ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਾਮਦਾਨ ਸਿੱਖੀਦਾਨ ਕੇਸਦਾਨ ਰਹਿਦਾਨ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਦਾਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਚਲਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ it's given to us as your heart starts getting prepared for it. That would be my addition.
Thank you for that point. Let me ask Gurjeet Singh Viji if he wants to add to this, and especially to what Meena Panji has said. I would just amplify that by saying she talked about Khalsa being pure, which is an internal state of mind. So the question would be, what does it have to do with external symbols? Manji Virji.
Very valid. I think that's the best question so far, because we are confused between Khalsa, Sikh, Gursikh. Someone used this.
Hanji Virji, you're cutting off.
मेरे द्वारे तो हाँ जी
Can you start again? Maybe we lost you for a second.
अच्छा जी okay
हाँ जी.
So this is internal. What Meena Khalsa is prem bhakti teh jani. Who has to understand? So Khalsa is nothing but Puran Brahm. The term Khalsa. There was a Sangat of Sri Chand and other people. They were Sikhs. This Sangat was Gur Sangat and then has been nominated by 10th Paatshah. Then that day he gave the Pahal to generate the military wing of it. They were all Khalsas already. We are confused that the Khalsa was generated. Singh Sajesi. Even 10th Singh that day, he was a Rai. He himself ke kol mein prakate Nanak Rai. They were all Rais. So that day, that particular day was given Pahal. Pahal is just to be initiated into the military wing of Khalsa. Those who came there, 80,000 or whatever, is not a right number at all. I will be surprised if there were 5,000 people. And no one else was given Pahal. Only the Panch Pyaras were given Pahal. That was just something new which he introduced. Later on this started. But that day, whatever we say, 80,000 came. If there would have been 80,000 people, we would have basically captured whole of India that day. We would have done it. So ultimately, Khalsa is a Puran Brahm. Then the one who picked up the arms is only they were liberating. They were given power. So that's my understanding.
So let me ask you the question that I've been asking everyone. What is the relevance of the external insignia today in the day and age that we live? I mean, is this something that matters anymore? I mean, it does matter to those, to whom it does matter, but I'm just throwing that question out there.
Yes, the one in address has been offered Guriyai by 10th Guru. Jo Guriyai hai, this is true that those 5 were given that day and was tested in Chamkaur Sahib. When 10th Paatshah say, I want to fight, the 5 of them said, you can't do that here. So that Guriyai was already given on that day, 1699. The whole system will be run by the Khalsa army. They are the protectors. They are our military wing. We are the civilian wing. If we don't want to get initiated as a guide by the rulings of the Ad Granths, we can't leave.
Anji Virji, we are losing you here.
Hanji Virji, the control was given to the Panch Pyaras. Because Gurta is what is, the Gurta was initiated before to one person, but after because he has written the Dasam Granth. No one else has to come further. Then the 5 were given the Gurta, that they have to basically manage the whole of the Khalsa. But they were also part of military wing.
So then
it's necessary for them to be.
the notion of a
Hanji.
Guru Panth and a Khalsa Panth is synonymous then in your view?
Then Khalsa who is not taking Pahal is also Khalsa, provided he understands what Gurmat is. Khalsa is not a separate thing. If you don't follow any of those sects which Guru Gobind Singh has asked us, Tir Maliye, Ram Raiye, Sir Goman Nadi Mar, if you don't follow them, you are. Whether you want to become a part of military wing is your choice. Then you have to take a Pahal. The Khalsa becomes after taking Amrit, which Meena Bhenji has said. Amrit is Amrit Gurte Pyaras give you Pahal, not Amrit. So these two words have been confused a bit.
ठीक है जी. Thank you. Appreciate your insight.
Can I add a little?
Hanji, Meena ji, very
because
quickly.
you said what is the significance of the outer bana? If
I was just asking a question. Yes.
Yes, I have a quick answer, which just flashed into my head, and it would be if it is coming from inside out. Yes, it is significant. If it is just for the sake of wearing it, I think it's totally insignificant.
Wow. Thank you, Ji. I'm going to reach out to Prapreet. Prapreet, you've been listening to this conversation, so I'm not going to repeat it. The only thing I would add to is what Meena Bhenji has just said. If it's coming from within, it's meaningful. If it isn't. Now, this brings an interesting point. I meet a lot of Sikhs who wear a pug who tell me that, who protest to me. I was talking to a very good friend of mine the other day, and he said to me in Punjabi, he says, "Asi Janeeu jehda sir te ban liya." Words to that effect. Yahan asi Gurdwara sir vich pand bana ke phirde the. What my point is, there are a lot of Sikhs who feel somewhat, oppressed by all of this. So, hence my question. So, I'll let you give us some insight into this.
Thank you, Vijay. So I think that's a very important question. And like what Meena Penji said, Khalsa is, there is a very slight difference of wording, is not created, or I don't become a Khalsa, or I don't convert myself, I don't baptize myself into a Khalsa. It is identification with the values of the Khalsa. There is a very slight but very, very fundamental difference here. Because when I identify with the values of a Khalsa, there are not a list of values, it is just one value, which is the value of truth. So at least in my head, I can only reconcile the entire concept with what Nanak started. He started it with Ikonkar. And it can only be that identification with that one, which cannot be, 50%, 70%. It can only be that or not at all. That is one. Second is when we talk about the Sarup, the external Sarup, I agree that it has to come from within. Otherwise, whether it is the pug or anything else, it is just a forced thing, which is where we need to go back to Guru Granth Sahib, which Gobind Pacha also referred as our, Guru. It is, my khoj through Guru Granth Sahib of that such. If that is not happening, then everything else would just be a forced kind of a ritual. The strong significance of these things, I feel, is a very strong symbolism that the external being has attached to it. For example, if we look at the Nishan Sahib, we bow down to it, ਅਸੀਂ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. But that is not what it is for. It is a very strong symbolism that here is a place ਜਿੱਧਰ ਉਹ ਸੱਚ ਦਾ ਰਾਜ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ. A place, where you study that, so to say, that Raj of such. So that we need to understand that symbolism, even everything else, whether it is Langar or Sarovar, that strong symbolism is there. if we attach to the physical part of it, I think personally it becomes a cult. And when it is a cult, it is as good as any other religion where the political aspirations or nation building is limited to physical boundaries, but not the revolution of thought that Nanak Patsha actually started. And when I come to a micro level for an individual, if again that revolution of thought doesn't happen, it will be something like, if we go through the entire lineage, नानक पातशाह ने जबरदस्ती जनेऊ पान नहीं देता, तेग बहादुर पातशाह ने जबरदस्ती जनेऊ लान नहीं देता. So it was a question of thought. It was not something which is going to be forced upon you. But at the same time, that being said, what really creates a turmoil in my mind is the word Khalsa, and when Gobind Pacha did it, how and why he created something new and coined a new term, which is not even there in Guru Granth Sahib. When he said, "Jo prab ko milboshe khoj shabad mein le," how do I kind of do khoj on that? And I have to refer to secondary text and not to the one which I have been pointed out to. That remains a very big confusion in my mind.
Hanji, thank you very much. I have to move on to Rana Virji and Gurdeep Singh Virji, who haven't had a chance
Can I
because
say
we are
few words?
already. Hanji, please go
Gurdeep
ahead.
Singh, Gurdeep
Hanji.
Singh, Maurya Montreal ji.
Hanji.
Can I say a few things?
Hanji, please.
Dekho, first thing I'm confused where this definition, this word came from. Amrit. It was not Amrit. It was Khande Bate di Pahal. Piva Pahal Khande Tar, where Janam se hila. I don't know when it started to it as a Amrit. Before it was Charn Pahal or Charnamrit, by Gudaji, it studied by Gudaji. Charnamrit was turned into Khande Bate di Pahal. Second term, where it became a Khalsa. Guru Gobind Singh ji. आत्म रस जय जानै सो है खालिस देव प्रभु मैं मोह मैं तात मैं रंच के नाहिन पेव. Now let's go back to Guru Granth Sahib. Guru Granth Sahib say आत्म रस जन जानिया हर रंग सहजे मान नानक धन तन जन आए ते परवान. These two quotes, one from Guru Granth Sahib, one from Guru Gobind Singh, exactly tell who's the Khalsa. Only mere symbol doesn't make a Khalsa. कहो कबीर साच कहूं सुन लियो सब है जिन प्रेम कियो तिनी प्रभ पायो. कहो कबीर गुरु ग्रंथ साहब, कहो कबीर जन पै खालसे प्रेम भक्ति जय जाने. So by merely the other thing is the symbols outside, they help you to go inside, but first thing we have to start from inside to out. ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਜੜ ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਲੱਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਹੋਵੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ. Guru Granth Sahib ji. So it should be support within you, but outside there as a crutches. A guy who cannot walk, he needs a support. So all these symbols are effective. It will keep us in the society in the proper shape, proper way. If we don't keep these symbols, but first thing is it has to be out of love. Like the mother loves all the stuff from the small kids, from their babies. We have to be in love with the Guru. And then the Guru, Sikha andar Satguru varta hai. Jo Sikha nu locha hai, so Guru khushi aana hai. Guru Granth Sahib ji. Hum Khalse ka Khalsa mero ot pot sagar bundero. Everything will come from the love. Nothing will come by wearing the symbols only, but you have to be love from inside. And dedication, then it's only a khande, but the pahal, pure pahal khande, that's not a amrit. Nanak amrit ek hai, दूजा अमृत नाहे नानक अमृत मने माहे पाइये गुर प्रसाद तिनी पीता रंग स्यों जिनको लिखा आद. नौ निधि अमृत प्रभु का नाम देही मैं इसका विश्राम.
Hanji.
गुरमुख अमृत पीवना नानक शब्द विचार. So this is not amrit. Excuse me, somebody has more strong points. Maybe I will get convinced. This is khande bati ki pahal. We don't become Khalsa immediately. It takes a time, but it's out of love. With the love of Guru, you can attain that stage. Forget me if I made any mistake. This is my study based on Guru Granth Sahib and Guru Gobind Singh.
Thank you, Virji. Thank you very much. Rana Virji, you're the last one on. We are already 15 minutes over our time.
I see that. A few observations here. One, the point was made earlier too, that in the present we are speculating what actually happened in 1699. Now we quoted historical and academic discussions, we bring it in, quoted historical documents, which says that Je Amrit ni chakya jo khandde pone le Khalsa ni bane, you don't get a mukti. We have a contradiction right away there. Bhai Kanhaiya is an outstanding example there. Jehdi Guru Gobind Singh Sahib recognized it. So if that is the case, if we go back without knowing the background of that, then we have to reconcile these type of disparities. Gallo, yeah, then it was said that on 1699 there were 20,000 people who got Khandegi poll. So I raised that, I pointed that to somebody, and immediately the question which was thrown back to me, and that do you think Guru Gobind Singh brought 20,000 kakars with him on the same day? They were already there. What did he come with all that? So these type of things we don't know what actually happened. My feeling is Guru Gobind Singh Sahib created the concept of Khalsa as the terminal benchmark for Sikhism. Guru Gobind Singh started, now Guru Nanak Sahib put a seed there, and he said this is the terminal benchmark. Everybody has evolved to that. It's not that you take a Khandegi Paul, you become Khalsa. No, you don't become Khalsa. You have to evolve into that. Sadi, because we are led by social inertia, which is out there, the fundamentalists out there, there are Sikhs there, they are throwing things out, they are telling us this has to be this was what Guru Sahib said. But my feeling is that, as pointed out, all these attire we have, insignia we have, it is only good if we have evolved into this one. Otherwise, we are putting up a show just like Jinehu and all that you pointed out. So my point is, this Khalsa is a epitome of Sikhism, and we have to evolve into that. We don't take Khandeki pole and become that, and that's we see what is happening outside. And I think I'll stop here.
Ji, thank you, Ji. Thank you very much. We are already over our allotted time, and much that I would like to continue. Perhaps we'll have another session. I do want to thank each one of you. A lovely, lively conversation. Some very interesting points made, but obviously there was no way that we could, have final answers to the questions, nor are they necessary. But I think the very fact that we churned a few thoughts, I'm sure that you will leave this conversation thinking somewhat afresh at this whole Vaisakhi of 1699. So with that, thank you very much, and Guru Fateh, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.